And each of those, I'm going to have some sub themes relative to this theme and analyze each coin from it a technical point of view to show you, why I back my statement that I take. So each coin, Bitcoin, Ethereum, Solana, and Dogecoin. Dogecoin is probably going to be the weakest of the four, but definitely the first three, where I'm going to show you examples from technical analysis on why I take the stance that I take. And so overall, I do think it is healthy to just, even if the news could help you, I think you could still ignore it. I'll get into that in the theme of this video. Some preliminaries about some of the products and services I offer, and then we'll get started. First things first is going to be Nowhere Premium. This is probably my cheapest quote unquote product service. I don't like saying those kind of terms. Basically, this is more of a premium type involvement of me for you, doing premium charts that I offer. As you can see here, here's some of the things here. This up here is kind of like my regular thing. If you're not in Nowhere HQ, which is the name of my Discord, you'll get access to all of these, relatively quickly. If you want premium, these are kind of what we offer here. We have premium charts, which is kind of like an insight on, I'll look at some charts typically. Sometimes I'll post them in the regular channels. Sometimes I'll post them in the premium, but then I'll also do more of an extensive look in the premium charts as well. And so, in addition to that, you got Mini Market Plus, which is, your daily videos. So I do 5 free regular videos, in the market updates up here, talking about Bitcoin, Ethereum, Solana, Dogecoin on the 4-hour time frames, and oftentimes the daily. Just kind of doing a daily recap, right? Where Mini Market Plus is I go across the board, all across the markets. Sometimes I kind of stay, very straight and slim as far as like just regular coins like Matic, Chainlink, those things. Or I go a little more experimental. Sometimes I talk about Bowden, sometimes it's a new coin. And then I tend to do follow-ups on that. So you get 5 of those videos per week. They're roughly around 10 to 12 minutes every day. So you get roughly about, a minimum of about an hour extra per week for that. And a lot of people, that tends to be the cornerstone feature that people like because it saves them lots of time to look at the markets. We also have a small cap section where we talk about smaller caps based on the market. We look at deck screener, things like that. Private videos, you get 2 of those videos generally per month, where if you as a premium member get to decide what you want me to cover. So it's basically a community based, decision, and I cover, commentary on that based off of my knowledge and things like that. Trading portfolio, we have a trading portfolio in there. We're doing pretty good. We started about 11,600. We're roughly at about 25,000 right now, so we're doing relatively well. The drop down from last week kind of hindered it a little bit, but we're doing just fine. That's part of it. It's not just a signal thing. Like, it's not advertised as a signal service. I don't encourage people to talk about it. I don't encourage people to use it as a signal service, I should say. Um, and so what I do is I have real money in there that I use to, trade basically. And so it's a combination of things. First of all, I try to have that 25% goal per month. My goal is to make 25% profits minimum per month. And then we adjust our strategy if we get more. And on top of that, it helps people learn how to stay disciplined trading. And this past week is a really great example, because some of you are used to the past 3 to 4 months where people just YOLO long, YOLO's, I guess, showing my age a little bit, but like it's people are so focused on buying, trying to find the next whiff or the next, meme coin, whatever. And I think people are realizing that this past week it's not that simple sometimes. Trading is simple, but the discipline isn't simple, okay? You can understand technical analysis well. You can really understand the basics of technical analysis within a month or two. That's what my Apex Academy will be about, coming up later in the next 30 days. But as far as this portfolio, it's going to go through the good times and the bad. Right now, we're in kind of a bad time, and this is where the resilience pays off. This is where the capital preservation and discipline pays off. And you're not going to find this much else. You're always going to find a Telegram bot or whatever where they just feed you signals, right? And then if they win, they're gonna brag about it to no end, right? If they don't, if they lose, be like, well, I told you you shouldn't have followed me, or do your own research, blah 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 blah. That's not what this is, okay? Part of that is you're going to see very few trading portfolios and accounts where they go through the muck with you, and that's exactly what this is, okay? And so we're going to navigate that together this week. I have not made an update for that in the past 24 hours because usually I do that on Mondays after these videos. So I will discuss that. We have some updates looking forward for that here in the next couple days. Solana wallet. This is one where we originally focused on. We started this in November, and I'm going to continue to keep this going. But this is a Solana-based ecosystem channel where we talk about coins, wallets, things like that. Basically, anything Solana in its ecosystem we talk about here. It's been very good, and it's helped us kind of separate the noise between Solana and other things. The one thing I didn't anticipate is how little I would talk about Ethereum actually, and so but so it may have been a little extra to add that channel, but it has been useful to organize that. The next one is Base Coins. This is a new channel. We have not opened this just yet, and where we are going to talk about the base ecosystem, the coin, the coins, tokens involved, things like that. I'm also going to create, I haven't created it yet, but I'm going to create a channel for ordinals and just Bitcoin in general. So we're going to get that going as well. That's just going to be something that I'm going to be adding. And so we're going to do that. And then Otsu Corner, where I share my personal notes. On top of all of that, I am introducing a light version to my Arun bots. That's going to be completely added into the premium. No extra charge on that. Okay, so you're gonna get a little bit of a light bot service. It's haven't quite decided how that's going to be presented, but probably going to be either some high time frame, you know, bot alerts, or it's going to be lower, all time frames on maybe Bitcoin, Ethereum, for example. We'll see where that goes. I got to figure out what's going to be best for everyone, right? Because I do have actual bots coming later, and that's going to be a full service, right? So anyway, that's nowhere premium. Right now it is $20 a month, and that's going to be a locked in price until I upgrade that. After I put in the bots, I will increase that price for only new members only. So if you get in now, you keep your discounted price. You also get a 7-day free trial. I think it's worth your bang for the buck. I've had and encouraged people to sign up and then just cancel their 7-day just to see if you like it or not. Okay, and most people have liked this, some people haven't. That's fine. It's not going to be for everyone. I'm not here to target everyone either. This is a way to have a general assistance across the board on how to view the markets. It tends to cater more towards people that are newer or people that have a feature that I have that most people do not. Again, a lot of people like the video updates. A lot of people don't do daily video updates. And so, anyway, it is what it is. If you like it, you can try it. Link in the description for the YouTube channel. So that's the first service of two that I'll talk about here. Second thing I'm going to talk about is the Apex indicator. I actually have four scripts, in fact, but the main one I'm talking about here is the one that people find the most interest in, and this is Apex Classic. This is something that gives you the buys and sell signals right here. Tells you where, based off of Arun-based price action, where the biggest opportunities are going to be. So this is a weekly time frame, of course, but this is mainly for an example. I'll run through some numbers here. But this darker area is where your entry would be. Your red area would be where your stop placement is. And then you can take your profit wherever you decide to do it. And so right now, this would be 12.6 R at 112%, right? So that's how that works. We can go ahead and take a look at like the 4 hour. This is what's current price action. This doesn't get repainted, nothing like this. You would have had your long signal way back here at 43,000. That would have been a very big payoff. And again, this is something, it's not going to get every trade, and that's okay. I'm going to tell you up front, like not every trade is going to be perfect here. I'm not going to sit here and hide that from you because you guys know the truth that people that try to be too full of themselves, they're trying to hide something. I'm not hiding anything from you here. This is live. This is something that I use. If you are in premium, you know that I use this maybe, I use this all the time, but I may tell you that I use it like once a week in the videos that I share. And so that goes to show you that I use them. So if you would have went to this sell signal right here, you would have had a 32R at 57%, pretty good. You would have got some chop here. This buy, this buy would have been stopped out. This buy or sell wouldn't have been the best. You got this cluster here, but you also got, you had this sell signal, which was good, but you also had the recent drop off here. It did a pretty good job of trying to navigate this. So this would have been your stop. Um, from the bottom, it would have been 8.3R at, was it 9%? I can't read that. And then currently would be 7.9. So you have some options there as far as that goes. Going on to Ethereum, this is what that looks like, much more cleaner. And so on the daily, this is what this looks like, pretty solid. Solana, this is your daily, had the long signal that I talked about this on Twitter, that we had basically a $21 buy-in. This was a 73R position that I closed last week. It had a sell signal on here. And so that's one reason why, a lot of you guys in premium and regular Discord, I guess, know that I put 25% of my entire net worth in Solana at $19. And this is one reason why, is because my Apex script had told me that this was a good idea. And the risk to reward was really good, and it was really good. It paid off. And so I've sold half of that. I actually have been buying some in recently. Now that we dropped 8%, I might buy a little bit more. We'll see where that goes. But those are my personal trades. Those are not portfolio trades. And so sell signal here looking pretty decent. This is what the 4 hour looks like as soon as it loads. There you go. And so get a little choppy here. So again, not hiding anything from you guys. And so this is what that looks like here. Again, big sell off recently. Capitalize on that move, and it's really good if you sense that the market might be going down like that. It's a good way to kind of reinforce what you might already be looking at anyway, right? And so anyway, that's the second big one. That I'll leave a link in the description for that. That is a one-time payment or 4 monthly payments, whichever you desire. So anyway, that's the product services. Let's get to the theme of this video. So the theme of this video is really focused on news-based price action. So the general concept, and so this is relevant because of the Middle Eastern conflict that we currently, I guess, have again for like the 40th time. Like I'm old enough to know where this isn't really news to me. So maybe this is a rose-colored glasses approach. At the same time, this does extend beyond just the Middle East thing and goes farther to the Ukraine thing and Russia thing and COVID and all these other, hot keywords that maybe I'm not even allowed to say on YouTube, or they'll de-algorithm me or whatever. But the point is, from any sort of perspective, a lot of people look at news or try to perceive news as a way to look at how the markets are going to react. And so the biggest example is the most recent one from over the weekend, that the market drop, like a lot of people perceive that the market drop, I'll go to the total here, was caused by the conflict that I guess started. And let's go ahead and piece this together one by one. I'm going to talk about first why people think that it is the way that it is and how it could make sense. And so that is a little bit contrary to what I was going to tell you, because I don't agree with it. But I'm going to present the opposing argument first and kind of see where that goes and see how that makes sense from their perspective, and then go into my reasonings why. So the biggest thing is that we had a drop down almost at the exact same time. And so right now, this is roughly, we're a couple hours past, we're about 4 hours past the U.S. market open, right? So we're roughly, was it 48 hours past? And so let's look at the date range here, and let's try to look at, 48 hours past. So this is basically right here. And so I'm going to use Solana as a better example because Solana shows the volatility more. This candle was a this candle right here, I should say, apologies for the fumbling. This candle was the candle for the conflict. Okay. this candle was already a current weakness candle. I think some people could interpret that as a Middle Eastern based or news based. I should say, I'll just say news based for now on. News based candle. I can see where they get that, but most of the action happened here. One of the reasons you can also probably tell from their perspective is that we had a larger candle. And so that's the thing. So across the board, so that was basically three candles ago. From Bitcoin, you had a drop down here. Ethereum, drop down here. Solana, drop down. And so that is consistent. And so I want to clarify that consistency. I'm not saying that I agree with it, but this is why people that do believe that news impacts price in this regard, um, that's why they believe it the way that they do. And so, to be honest with you, that's probably the best case that they have. I think that's a easy concept to grasp, and I also think a lot of people truly believe that. I don't even necessarily think that that's really that wrong to believe. As far as a statement, that makes a lot of sense, and I think, in fact, I know that that is why people take the stances they take, is because, well, they see price going up or down when news is also up or down. And so they correlate the two. It is not that uncommon with looking at stocks and indexes and looking at that as correlation for Bitcoin, Ethereum, or any sort of asset, right? And so that's basically the extent of it. Now, I think that that's where we run into some trouble because the buck basically just stops there. And so there's no further, you know, deeper look into all that. It's just kind of an assumption like, oh, the price is going down. Oh, there's something going on in the Middle East or wherever, right? And so it's like, okay, that just, that's why the price is going down. And the thing that gets me too is people just kind of assume that and then just kind of go with it and say, all right, that's why this is doing that. Maybe should I sell my stuff too? Yada yada yada. It doesn't really go too much farther. It's a very surface level idea. And so that's where I believe we run into a lot of problems. Primarily that it doesn't really help you benefit your trading. Okay, most of the time we think about this after the fact. We never look at, most people don't look at news and say, all right, there's something going on in the Middle East, so I'm going to short or I'm going to sell. Okay, most people don't typically think that way. They typically say, okay, we, you know, they look at the other way around. It's like, why the market is selling, why is it selling? And even right now, you can see on the right hand side, we have the price going down. And so people's instinct right now is to say, all right, what's going on? I'm going to log on Twitter and I'm going to find out what's going on in the markets. And people are going to try to find some bad news. It's going to be easy to look for because there is some conflict in the Middle East right now that just started, a few days ago. And they're going to try to put things together. Now, sometimes that is correct, okay? To the point where a broken clock is going to be right twice a day. That's kind of what I mean by that. And I'm not trying to be rude, not trying to be harsh by any means, but the instinct is to try to find a reason for the drop down. Now, I'm also willing to admit that price action is very nuanced and doesn't always have to be pure price action. Some things like the COVID drop is purely news. Okay. That's something where there are exceptions to that rule. And my personal rule, not that's not a rule that people have. Most people by and large, like I'm definitely in the minority. Most people by and large believe that news impacts price. I don't. Not in the way that that's interpreted. Now, the exceptions, of course, are things like COVID, where that was an international, very big deal, and the price does reflect that. That being said, it also helped reflect a bottom. And that's one reason why I tell people black swans are bullish events. Black swans are bullish events because in almost every case, Mt. Gox, COVID drop, all these black swans that have happened have been the bottom. And I would venture to say that there's only been really three black swan events in Bitcoin's history, if you count the drop from 6,000 to 3,000. If not, there's only two: Mount Gox and COVID. I guess I can also add Silk Road, but to be honest with you, I'm not familiar with the Silk Road price action to give you an idea on that. I know it was a big deal, and that was a long time ago. Mount Gox specifically caused a drop down because that was the whole point of it. And then COVID, of course, knocked everybody out of the park with that as well. And both of the two instances that I have recalled, which is Mount Gox and which Mount Gox, by the way, stands for Magic the Gathering Online Exchange or something. It's really crazy. So Mount Gox and COVID drop were both bottoms, and so that's why even so, like 2008 financial crisis, bottom. When there is a crisis, that ends up being the bottom. Black swans are bullish events almost every single time. So that brings a curveball, in fact, because the idea should be, well, if it's a black swan, that means the news impact price, so it should continue to do so. Well, no, it kind of stops there, right? And so that's where this conundrum with news and price impact kind of dissolves. Because my thesis, my idea here is that you're always going to see bad news, you're always going to see good news. Okay? Now there's some bad news is going to be worse than others, some good news is going to be better than others. So I completely agree with that. All that being said, I think the best healthiest approach is to say that bad news can only impact price if price is already weak. Okay, I think that's a much healthier stance. Somebody talked to me about that in Twitter yesterday. I agree with that stance, and I think that that's a much healthier approach. From my standpoint, is that Bitcoin and the markets were already weakening. Arun was telling me that from a liquidity standpoint. It's been telling me that for a month actually, and we'll look at the reasons why. Solana in particular, Ethereum and Solana are really good reasons why. You also had these other meme coins where people were coming up with racist based meme coins, which that is what it is. That's just the crypto world for you. At the same time, you can see that the more degenerate things get, and the more, I'll say, sinful things get, because I think racism is sin, you start to get a top out on the markets. You start to try to, a wise person would try to hedge. Okay. We were overextended on many markets. Some some coins, I believe Solana was one of them, that it reached its all-time high on a high time frame RSI point of view. That's concerning to me. And so the conditions are there. Now, me also, or shouldn't say me also, in addition to that, people have this idea where they forget price action and technical analysis when it's the most important to do so. So the 3-week chart, for example, this is why, I talk about this all the time. I apologize if you've heard me say this 10 times, but we had a 3-week bearish divergence on Bitcoin. And this is one reason why I sold everything at the top. And that ended up being one of the best decisions that I have made. And that was a purely price action standpoint. It wasn't from anything news based, nothing like that. I don't know if there really even was any bad news based at the time. I think the Russia thing, which we'll talk about in a second, happened a couple months after that. But we'll talk about that because a lot of people believe that the Russia-Ukraine was one of the reasons for the drop down. And I disagree. Strongly disagree, because there's still conflict going on right now. And the price has gone up. And that's one of my counter arguments, actually, because looking at Bitcoin here, this was the pre-news drop down for this past weekend. This was the news candle that we had. And so yes, this did drop down. But were we already dropping down? Absolutely. So, what is your interpretation when you see something like this? Now, I also want you to note prior to this, I'm going to go back to here, we had a continuation triangle. Okay? So keep in mind this is, you know, April 6th. So we had almost 10 days. This is 9 days before, in the past. And so this is what I was looking at. You can look at my Discord and look at the videos. I still have them up. And so the idea is that we broke bullish here, and so that we would continue to go up. I made mention of this as well, is that we would continue to go up from here. But I also made a disclaimer. I believe I can't remember what video it was, but I made a disclaimer that, hey, sometimes when we struggle at continuations, we get a fake out back to the downside. Even if that wouldn't be the case, a deviation back below is a very big deal. And this is why I just preach deviations, because they're so important. It's a sign that not only shows that things were faked out, but that the supply and demand was not what it meant, not what it was. A supply and demand was tested. It ended up being false, and then the opposing supply or demand, whichever is the opposite of that, is actually the true supply or demand. So in this particular case, we were testing we were testing the demand. We found out that the supply was too strong. We rejected. Okay, and now we're in supply mode, that people are selling off, right? So this was the next bar. Once that happened, all bets were off. That was April 9th. Okay, that was 6 days ago. So 6 days ago, I already knew that we would have some issues. And so that's part of it. Now, did I anticipate such a harsh rejection? Was I anticipating 30 to 50% across the board? Uh, Actually, yeah. I did post about that in Twitter. I paused the video to try to make a link for this, and I couldn't do it. But on April 4th, I talked about Pepe, and I talked about all meme coins that could drop down 30 to 50% relatively quickly, and they've done so. One of the examples with Pepe is, I still have this chart here, is that this was my target for this order block, and it's coming down here. Now, April 4th was basically right here, and we actually pumped um, pretty moderately since that point. I mean, up as much as 17%. So a lot of people would have called me crazy, and that's completely fine. People call me crazy anyway. But this is something where we've dropped down really ever since. And was it? The fourth was right here. So about 25%, give or take, about 5% either way. So we're about halfway what I've already talked about. So we're kind of getting into that territory where I was talking about it before the drop, and in fact, we pumped prior to that. And so a lot of people um, are basically saying, well, the news caused the drop. And again, I can understand your point of view. I can understand why that makes sense, even. But the more that you look at that, the more it doesn't make sense. It allows, and one of the biggest things is, it allows people to take a blind eye towards bearish price action. They want to find reasons why they were offsides, why they lost money. And so, because of that, it allows the average person, and actually more so the pro trader that wants to stay blind, it allows them to keep a one-sided point of view, to not look at warnings that the charts give us, to not look at overextensions. Okay, like we had a pretty big overextension here, and we went up to the 90s on the RSI level here. Anytime, I don't care who you are, anytime we get to the 90s, you should start being concerned. That does not mean that we will fumble. That does not mean that we will continue to go down, because keep in mind that we were at 90 percentile right here. We proceeded to go up 200% after that. So I'm not saying that you should get out there. I'm saying that you should take caution at the price action starting there, because that will give you insight on what comes, what comes next. When things come up, they snap back. Okay. This is all the market is doing, is snapping back. The reason I have this level here is because I firmly believe that this level will get to return to this level. Um, and to be honest with you, I think that the sell off today is just a continuation of that. There are levels. We'll look at that in all these coins. There are levels that indicate that that is the case. So my point is, it's not so much that news impacts price, but that news it's funny how 99% of the cases, and I'll get to the COVID and the Russia thing here in a second, but in 99% of all cases, if there's bad news, you can try to put something where the price is. So, for example, is if there's bearish news and there's bearish price, I'll say, hey, I can put that together. Well, I can also do that the other way around. There's a lot of bearish news out there that does not impact price, and so well, what happens then? You see what I'm saying? That's where the thesis on news impacting price kind of falls apart, because you're always going to have news. You pretty much have bad news every day and good news every day, believe it or not. And so for most of the time. So why doesn't the bad news impact that price at that time? What's the reasoning for that? Well, there's some other reason, and that's my point, right? That's my point, is that you can't pick and choose when the news impacts the price. People conveniently choose this because they are unwise on their portfolio, or they made an honest mistake, or they just want to not have to deal with the energy, the mind energy needed to look at all that, right? So anyway, I should digress from that. But what I want to do is I want to look at COVID and see what that looks like, because a lot of people are comparing this to Black Swan. I strongly disagree. That, in fact, that's borderline laughable to me. But let's go ahead and look at this. So, this candle, see right here. This candle was your news from over the weekend, right? And so people said, "Oh, this is bearish." The funny thing was, I mean, we already in three. The past two candles were bearish. In fact, the past five were already in a bearish trend, and in fact, we were already in a downtrend for quite a while. And so if you go from just the close to here, we went down 12% in 33 days. In fact, we already had went lower. So how do you explain this? How do you explain that we actually were lower last month, almost a month ago to this day? How do you explain that we were lower there? See what I'm saying? It doesn't make sense. And in fact, we are still within a range. If you want to take just candles here, we are still within a range on Bitcoin. Now, of course, that doesn't excuse things like Solana, right? And Solana will have its turn, don't get me wrong. But as far as Bitcoin goes, Bitcoin's been pretty resilient among this. Okay, how do you also explain gold and silver being up versus everything else? I don't think a lot of people at Costco really bought that much gold. People are, of course, but I don't know if that has a big impact on the price. But we're still within a range here. A lot of these things, like WIF, like you can't tell me that, you just can't sit there and tell me that the news impacted this. This little bitty candle impacted all, that news that was on this candle impacted all of this. Doesn't make sense. We were already in a free fall. Okay. And that's because, whether you like it or not, WIF is not that good of a token. WIF is a crap coin meme token, and there's nothing wrong with that. That is a true statement. I'm not saying that to be rude. Just know what you're getting into. You should know what you're getting into when you're trading meme coins. That these aren't always going to be so high and mighty, and that's one reason why I do have criticisms. I don't criticize. I don't do this rudely, but this is one reason why I do put up a criticism with people that blindly follow Ansem and Haska and a lot of these other people, because they are going to make you lose money, okay? Just because he called Solana and WIF, which, by the way, a lot of people did, including me, doesn't mean that they're going to get everything right. Okay? And I'm just saying. I've seen this before. This is not a criticism on anybody in particular. This is my third cycle, and I've seen people do this all the time. I've had this happen to me my first cycle, okay? People like Korean Jew, people, like that, cause people to lose money, and I see this happening again, and I see people defending someone that they've never met, that they try to relate to, that say, he's a father. There's nothing wrong with that. I'm a father too, okay? I'm a father of a disabled kid. So I understand all that, okay? But that doesn't mean that they get a pass. I don't get a pass. I don't want to have a pass, okay, necessarily. I think that's different from being graceful. You should be graceful to people, I think. That's how I try to live my life, and I fail constantly at that. But the point is, you shouldn't blindly follow people. And also think of this from a bandwagon perspective. Okay, if you have hundreds of thousands of people that are going to buy anything that the one person says, that should scare you because they can move a lot of things with very little effort, which also means that things are going to snap back with very little effort. And that shows you what's going on. WIF is down 14%. That's something that Ansem has talked about quite a bit. Pups down 30%, 30% today. And I'm not even sure what this is. I don't know if that's technically part of it. But there's other things at play. The meme coins are weak in general, so I'll give it that, right? At the same point, part of that could be, instead of focusing on news-based price action as a reason for things to go down, you should also be looking. There's no reason, if you take that stance, you should also be taking the stance that influencers cause the same thing, and that you should not be following these big time influencers that cause you damage. And guess what? You praise them after they cause you damage, like some Nightingale effect crap. Okay, and it's really weird. I've seen it for 3 cycles now. It's very, very, very strange. And I warn people about that. That is why I take the position I take. I am not against anybody. But the thing is, if you think I'm hating you or someone else because I'm taking a nuanced stance, a logical, unbiased stance, then who's really the problem? Am I really the problem for speaking the truth? A lot of people that speak the truth get in trouble because people that lie to themselves or to others don't want to hear the truth. Okay. And I'm not, you can do what you want. Okay. If you want to blindly long anything and everything, including what I say, that's your business. I do not tell you to do that. But at the same time, I'm just saying have prudence to what you see in the markets. Now, let's go ahead and go to the correlations, or I should say the events with Russia, COVID, and black swans. Now, to reestablish this was the news day, right? And as I mentioned, we're still within a range. We still in the drop down from the highs, things like that. We also have the halving coming up, which is also, a lot of people have said we tend to drop down before the halving, which also tends to be the case. Now, let's go ahead and go to the Russia-Ukraine. Conveniently, I already have marked out here. And so this was the beginning. This candle right here was when Russia invaded Ukraine. And as you can see, this is a bullish candle. Okay. And feel free to look into my notes. In fact, let me just double check this just to make sure. And when did it happen? Let's see. February 24th. Oh, that was 4th. Okay. Let's go here. 24th. Okay. And see, here's the thing. I actually got it wrong, and I'm just like doing it live. That's how confident I am in this. So February 24th, 2022. So as you can see, we had a bullish candle that day. We had a bullish day after that. Had a slight drop down. People were freaking out about this. I remember this very, very keenly. And then we had a pretty good bounce on that. So let's go ahead and go to the total. I'm going to do the total 3 to get rid of Bitcoin and Ethereum. And look at this. It's already choppy to all get out anyway. But let's go ahead and look at what we can see here. Now, February 24th. 2022, very similar. We had a bearish day for altcoins, and and we had that big drop down. So could you relate that to the news? Possibly. I'm not going to deny that. And so, but there's a difference between a reaction and what actually happens, like what actually prints, right? And so, as you can see, like there was a harsh reaction, whether that was news or not news. That's not really my stance. What is my stance is what did happen. Nothing. Okay, we had a nothing candle. Okay, in fact, a lot of times these signal bottoms, and so that's what I kind of said. If you believe that these are black swans, you should be buying. Black swans are bullish events. Okay, in this particular case, we actually push up above, and then we consolidate here, and then we push up above. So at what point, where should I interpret this as a bearish event? Where should I interpret the Russia-Ukraine thing as a bearish event? At this candle? Well, it went down, but then it also didn't, you know? Um, It was it was a bearish candle, but just barely. So how should I interpret that? Because the high on that was, 668, or no, the open was 645, and the 645.7, and the close was 645.4. So it only made a difference of about zero point 0.3 or even 0.25, depending on how you want to round that off. So was that really bearish? Okay, if that was, then that means it's over, right? Because we pumped up. So if this was caught, if the Russia Ukraine was causing the bearish price action, well, how do you explain the sideways push up? Okay, and so then how do you explain the drop down? Is it responsible for all of this, or is it responsible for only the bearish parts? See what I'm saying? That's where people try to make their own decisions and their interpretations, and I believe that is very bad because you start to try to believe what you want to see, and that doesn't give you proper analysis for price action. I see things much, much differently here, that we were already in a downtrend from here. We already also had that 3 week bearish divergence from the high time frame. We were consolidating. This looked like it was a possible point of bounce based off of this section right here, but I don't think I was really bullish necessarily. I can't remember offhand, but we had the deviation here. And so again, we're looking at total charts right now. Let's go ahead and get rid of all this. And then look at this like so. And so once we had this deviation drop down, all bets were off, capitulation. Okay, and people even disagreed about the capitulation. But that's kind of where I was looking at that. So just something to keep in mind overall. I don't think, if you think that was a bearish event, you either have to take a very strict stance, which doesn't make sense because it went up significantly before it went back down. Like you're talking about, where are we at here? And I'm doing the total 3 because it had a better reaction. I'm trying to give more benefit of the doubt. Actually, I'm trying to give people more data to try to prove their stance, and even then, it's not working. So, from this standpoint, for the rest of that price action took 67 days. So you're roughly, let's just say 60 to round that down. So you're saying it took 60 days to have an effect. That does not make sense. It does not. There's no logical standpoint. And of course, now you can say, well, it's not that big of a deal. Well, it was a big a deal to those people back then. Just like the Middle Eastern thing is a big deal to people right now. But I'm telling you the same thing. I haven't changed my stance. I'm telling you that it doesn't have the impact that you think that it does, and anything that you think that it does is too vague of an interpretation to use for real analysis. That's what I'm trying to say. Now, let's go ahead and go back and let's go to the COVID drop. And so that's the one that we are going to look at here. And so this is where things happen a little bit differently. And so some of this is based off of my personal experience that may or may not be the full experience. But we were already in a drop down. That's one thing that I'm pretty certain, is that we were already in a push down here. but there were some concerns about COVID here. This was your COVID drop here. Okay. So this is a really good example of where not only did a black swan did occur, but it also did impact price. And you can see the difference. Do you see the difference here? The price impacted the price was impacted by the news. Well, I mean, stocks were closed, and there was a worldwide pandemic, and a lot of people died. You couldn't go out of your house, things like that. So that is a full scale event. I don't think anybody disagrees with that either. Including me, I completely agree that this was a news based push down, and you can see this. You can see the volatility on like the strictness. It went through all of these levels, didn't really bother anything. In fact, I think on got actually it reached a new low on the total. I think it actually got close to reaching a low. Where's it at here? On Bitcoin. We got very close. We didn't quite get there, but it reached the low from that drop down there. And so, but one thing, and both of these, this and the total three are going to be the same thing. Had that fierce drop down, you could tell because there was very little wick to the upside. But at the same time, this is where I talk about black swans being bullish events. It was nothing but bounce after that. Okay, because everybody had already sold, and that's what news based price action looks like. Okay, it looks very, very, very different. And I know that's only one example, but Bitcoin's still relatively young compared to the stock market. So anyway, that's my interpretation. If you don't agree with me on any of this, that's completely fine. We can agree to disagree. I'm not trying to sell anybody on that. This was just more of a recent thing that people looked at, said, "Hey, the news, blah 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 blah." Market's still going down right now, and again, I'll explain this through each coin how that looks. But anyway, that's the theme, and that again, it's extensive. Let's go on to Bitcoin.